People have always said, what does she really think? So this is a pretty unvarnished view of who I am and what I've done over the course of my lifetime. And, I feel really good about the film. I feel that it is a very authentic, honest view of who I am and what I stand for. And, there will be snippets. I mean, the 15 seconds about Sanders was in, 35 hours of interviews. And then, of course, I immediately said, look, I'm going to support the nominee, whoever it is. And everybody else better do the same, because we cannot afford 4 more years of what we're going through. I never remembered the footage that she found of Tim Kaine telling me about that phone conversation. So that was kind of like, news to me. But boy, there's some quite interesting parallels to that. I made the decision that I was moving on with my life, and this is part of moving on, this kind of retrospective, very open look at who I am. But I have not moved on from caring about my country. I haven't moved on from believing that, Donald Trump and his enablers are doing terrible things to America and the world. So I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be speaking out and making as much noise as I can to try to illustrate what the stakes are. I won 3 million more votes the last time, and we just have to figure out how our nominee can win that electoral college, because that's a remnant from the compromises made with the slave states back at the founding of the Republic. That's all that matters. And so we've got to rally behind whoever is chosen, and I intend to do that. And I intend to call people out who aren't doing it, because I have this very unusual experience because of the life I've led and the public roles I've had. So in 2008, it was a really close election with Barack Obama. I actually got more votes, but he got more delegates, so he won. And I dropped out, and I endorsed him, and I went to the floor of the convention, and I moved his nomination by acclamation. It really disappointed a lot of my supporters, because they believed in me and they had fought for me. But I had no doubt it was the right thing to do. So in the 2016 primary, I win by 4 million votes. It wasn't close at all by primary standards. And there's all this grumbling and rumbling and, just nitpicking, and it goes on. And Michelle Obama gets booed at my convention, and John Lewis, and, you go, what is wrong? Do these people not understand what the stakes are? So I'm going to keep speaking out about this, because, politics is not a game of purity. It is a game of, pragmatic choices about what you think is best for you, your family, your country, the world. And when you go down the list of what's at stake in this election to try to repair the damage that's already been done and then deal with problems like healthcare or climate change or whatever it might be, I'm going to be a very strong voice saying, come on, folks. We can recover from one term of this madness that we've had inflicted on us, but the damage of 4 more years to the rule of law, to our institutions, to our common, humanity, to our role in the world, that could be devastating.
Well, I did have almost a booklet of questions that I memorized. It just went on for pages. But it was all thought out what the structure was going to be. I had written a treatment that, always changes once you start putting it together. But I really was very thoughtful before I did any interviews of the kind of story and information and insight that I wanted to gather.
It was a little bit daunting because she did have like this big stack of, I guess, the treatment plus the questions that went with it. But, I've been interviewed obviously a million times, but I thought that Nanette brought to the process an understanding of the complexity of the story, but a determination to try to create a narrative. And not just as I was experiencing it in talking with her, a narrative about my life, but where my life fit into the arc of history. The women's movement, our political situation in our country, how my life reflected a lot of the choices and challenges that people were facing from, the last 50, 60 years. So when you're interviewed by someone who has a really intelligent, contextual understanding of the story she's trying to tell, it was kind of revelatory because I might go off on a tangent, but she would bring me back. And it was a really positive experience.
There were two main reasons why I wanted to cut back and forth between 2016 and going into her life story chronologically. One was there was this incredible asset of all of this behind the scenes footage from the 2016 campaign where you saw Secretary Clinton and her staff in a most unfiltered way. And since the premise of the story is, she's both vilified and admired, and she's just a really real person, complicated, fleshed out, three-dimensional person, and here she is. I didn't want to just wait till the end of episode 4 to be able to show that kind of material. I thought it was really important to interweave it. The other reason why I wanted to do that structure was because I think the past and the present are constantly being unified. Like something's happening in the 2016 election. And if you understand what's happened in her past, it makes a lot more sense. She's being accused of being centrist, but then you understand in her past, she's always been the same person. It was far more on the liberal spectrum, and she used to be accused of being too liberal. And so the sort of ironies of her history and the way politics play out was more apparent by going back and forth in time.
I had no idea how she was going to structure the film until I actually saw it. And I thought it was a brilliant device because there's so much in this movie that is relevant to today. And the 2016 election has all kinds of implications for the 2020 election. The kinds of challenges that I faced back when I was fighting for universal health care and they were burning me in effigy, which is something I'd forgotten, but she found the footage of. We're now having another big debate about how do we get to universal health care, which is a great debate that we're having on the Democratic side, while the other side is trying to take it all away. Mm-hmm. So there was so much that was connected, not just the 2016 campaign, but I think Nanette did a masterful job of throwing it into the future that was really reflected in some of the challenges and choices that I made in the past.
I mean, when I was given the reins to take on this project, I was told, come back to us what your vision is for it and tell us, is it going to be a film? Is it going to be a series? How many hours is the series going to be? So there was a lot of a wonderful opportunity to just play out what you as a filmmaker think is the best thing for this story. And, I also didn't feel like, it has to be 60 minutes even. I mean, it could be 63. So you're just, you're allowed to tell the story of where it feels right to break, where there's a good moment to feel like, okay, I'm going to the next chapter. And, of course, you want some sort of hook as well to get people to want to watch, the next episode. But
I was stunned that all the people at the premiere yesterday stayed for 4 hours. I mean, that's a huge commitment. And then when Nanette and I went after it was over to do our Q&A, all the seats were still filled. That was very gratifying, I think, to both of us, that people understood what this film was supposed to do and followed it and wanted to stay until the end and then wanted to hear more about it. So I hope that's a really good omen for, people watching it in their homes and trying to make sense of it, while they sit there by themselves or with their families.
I've actually screened a lot of films, not just at Sundance, but other festivals, and I've sat in the room because it's always fun to watch it with an audience. And I have never seen an audience so vocal as this screening. I mean, they would clap spontaneously at points. They would laugh at even subtle humor. They would hiss if something upset them from, the other side of the aisle. So it was remarkable. I really was I was stunned. I mean, I've seen this a lot of times, and I thought, I'll just stay for the first 5 minutes, make sure it's playing right. And I actually couldn't leave my seat the entire time because it was so fun to watch it with that kind of audience. It was so engaged. You could see how this story and this material was so important to people on an emotional level.